Hey up, it's Steve from the Old Yorkshire Geek, and welcome to the next part of my series, top 5 favourite films from each year since I was born, or whatever. I look at my top 5 films, my 5 favourite films from a particular year since I was born. We're up to 1982, bit of a guess there, bit of a clue, if you can hear me, bit of a clue there as to what is in this list. It's a list, it's not a countdown, it's my top 5 favourite films, and I've also got, let me count them up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 honourable mentions that I just felt I had to, put in there. I don't know why I've put one of them in. Whatever. Whatever. I honestly don't know why I've put one in. There's one in there that I don't know why I've put it in. I'm going to take it out. I don't even know why it's in. For some reason I put Swamp Thing in there. I don't even particularly like that film. Why did I put it in? I don't know. The Wes Craven version of Swamp Thing. Maybe I put it in for Adrian Barbeau's boobs. I don't know. But what the heck? I'll include it. Whatever. I don't know. Weird. Right. So anyway, enough of that. Let's get on with the list, shall we? As I said, this is a list of my top 5 favourite films. They're not in any order. Number 1 isn't the best, number 5 isn't the worst, etc. And it's not what I think are the top 5 best films of the year, although they are my favourite films of the year. They may not be the best films of the year, although, as I always say, I could argue that fact. Right, so let's get on with it, shall we? So First up in the list is Rocky 3. As I said, they're not in any order. Rocky 3, written and directed by Sylvester Stallone. This is my favourite of the Rocky films, even more so than the first one, which won all the accolades. I love Rocky 3. Spoilers ahead, by the way. In this film, Rocky Balboa is the world champion. I presume it's like the undisputed world. I don't think they have any other world champions. It's just Rocky, isn't it? It's not like nowadays where you've got a million different belts. He is just the champ. And he's been the champion for a few years. Then along comes Clubber Lang, played by Mr. T, who's hungry, who's got the eye of the tiger, which is the thing to do with the film. And basically he beats Rocky quite easily. He just walks all over him. Albeit Rocky did have other things on his mind at the time. I won't spoil that. But and then it's coming back from coming back from defeat. Spoilers, to win the championship back again at the end. So anyway, it's a great film with a great theme song, Eye of the Tiger by Survivor. So there we go. Also stars Talia Shire, the usual gang from the Rocky films, Burt Young, Carl Weathers and Burgess Meredith. And cool music from Bill Conti, and all that stuff. Right. So that's Rocky 3, a cool film. I love Rocky 3. Next up, Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan. A lot of people think this is the best of the Star Trek films, and I won't argue. I think it probably is the best of the Star Trek films. Although I do say now that I think Star Trek the Motion Picture is the most Star Trek of the Star Trek films, but I do think Star Trek 2 is the best. As a movie, it's not particularly Star Trek-y in places, particularly the phasers. Don't get me started on the phasers. I know they do have a extended universe explanation for why the phasers are like they are. They're not like that. They're not beam phasers, not that we normally see in Star Trek. They're like we see what the USS Defiant has. They're like pulse phasers, and they do try and explain it with an expanded universe. But anyway, whatever. Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, essentially written and directed by Nicholas Meyer, although the screenplay by Jack B. Sowards is credited, but it was essentially rewritten entirely by Nicholas Meyer. Starring the usual gang, William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, DeForest Kelly, Ricardo Montalban is the special guest villain for this one as Khan. Also James Doohan, Walter Koenig, George Takei, Nichelle Nichols. Then we've got Bibi Besh, as Carol Marcus, Merritt Buttrick as David, and Paul Winfield as Captain Terrell of the USS Reliant. And introducing the lovely, gorgeous Kirstie Alley as Lieutenant Savick, a cadet. I still don't understand how cadets get ranks, but anyway, whatever. People more into the law will know. I think we've seen it before as well, in that cadets get ranks. I presume that rank follows over when they graduate. But whatever. It's a cool film. It follows on from the original series episode Space Seed. It's 15 years have passed. Khan, who are left on a planet Ceti Alpha 5 by Kirk in Space Seed, where they had a good chance of survival because it was a habitable world. But a disaster happened, and I think it doesn't say it in the film, but I think what happened is a disaster happened. Ceti Alpha 6 exploded and switched the orbits of the planets. So I think what happened was Starfleet thought that Ceti Alpha 5 had exploded, but what had happened? The Ceti Alpha 6 had exploded, and the orbit of Ceti Alpha 5 had essentially gone into where Ceti Alpha 6 should have been. You'd think they'd know better, wouldn't you? Because it's supposed to be the best of the best out of the Starfleet. You'd think they'd realise what had happened, but I think they thought Ceti Alpha 5 had exploded. So they thought Khan were dead, which is why they didn't bother checking to see how they were doing. Anyway, it's about Khan going for revenge on Captain Kirk. He steals the Reliant, goes after the Enterprise. Space battles ensue. It's cool. It's amazing. Watch the extended version. It's miles better than the theatrical version, which is still pretty good in itself. Not pretty good, very good. So there we go. So that's Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. The best Star Trek movie, in my opinion. Right, next up. The Sword and the Sorcerers next. I really love this film. I saw it back in the day, not at the cinema, but when it came out on VHS, it got rented. And I was like, wow, why aren't all sword and sorcery films like this? Came out before Conan the Barbarian, which you'll note is not in my list. I'm not a huge fan of Conan the Barbarian. I don't hate it as much as you might think, but it's not one of my favourite films at all. I think this is infinitely better, infinitely more enjoyable. But anyway, written and directed by Albert Pyun, along with Tom Karnowski and John V. Stuckmeyer. Stars Lee Horsley, Kathleen Bella, Simon McCorkindale, George Maharis and Richard Lynch, with some cool music from David Whittaker. It's also got who plays the Richard Moll. Richard Moll, who plays the Sorcerer of the title. And Anthony DeLongis as Rodrigo. You may know Anthony DeLongis from Star Trek. He's been in Voyager and other Star Treks as well, but I think he's most famously known as a Kazon in Voyager. I think that's Anthony DeLongis. Anywho, it's a really good fantasy adventure that's violent, lots of blood in it. Not as gory as you might think, but it's pretty gruesome in places. And the evil King Cromwell wants to take over a peaceful kingdom ruled by the good King Richard. Wants to take over this kingdom, so he uses a sorcerer called Zusha, who's proper evil. He looks evil. He's got glowing eyes and glowing finger ends and stuff like that. No, he ain't got glowing eyes. What am I talking about? He's got glowing finger ends when he uses his sorcery, and uses his magic to take over this peaceful kingdom, killing the royal family, Richard and his wife and the kids. But one of the children escapes. Prince Talon escapes and comes back 20 years later or whatever. I'm like 11 years later. I've just noticed it in the plot thing on Wikipedia. Whatever. He comes back as an adult. Escapes as a child, teenager. Comes back as an adult. As General Talon, I think they call him. But he's not coming back, as you might think, to take his kingdom back. He just wants revenge on Cromwell. which, spoilers, he gets his revenge and also deals with the sorcerer as well, amongst other things. And it is a really enjoyable action-adventure fantasy, and I think it's miles better than Conan the Barbarian, which came out after this. So everybody, you hear people saying Conan the Barbarian was the first great fantasy, adventure. No, this was, in my opinion. Right, so that's it. That's the Sword of the Sorcerer, or the Sword and the Sorcerer. Oh, it's really hot here today, and I'm struggling. I'm gonna have to have a drink. It is really hot. I've got the windows open, got the ceiling fan going. I've got my little air conditioning thing there going. So if you hear any background noise, that's that. But it is really, really warm today, by Yorkshire standards. Right, next up, horror, Poltergeist. I think one of the great American horror films. One of the great American PG horror films. I don't think it's particularly scary, but I just think it's a great film, with some great set pieces in it and action and stuff like that, but not particularly scary. Some people say the scariest thing in it, spoilers again, is where the man pulls his face off. But I just think that looks ridiculous. I don't think it looks scary at all. It looks like a dummy face, but whatever. But it's got some great effects in it. Directed by Tobe Hooper, written by Steven Spielberg, Michael Grace and Mark Victor. Some people have suggested it was essentially directed by Steven Spielberg as well. I'm sure he had his fingers in the pie as a producer, but it is a Tobe Hooper film. Stars JoBeth Williams, Craig T. Nelson, Beatrice Straight, the late Dominique Dunn, Oliver Robbins, the late Heather O'Rourke, and who else? Of course, the late Zelda Rubinstein, as Tangina Barrons, the mini psychic. It's about a family that have lived in this house for a while. I don't know how long. I think they've been there a while. But just suddenly, spooky things start happening. Don't know why. They just do. And it's around the little girl, the Heather O'Rourke. Weird things start happening. But they're here. They come out of the TV for some reason. It doesn't explain why. Why they start happening at this particular time. And it turns out it's the house being built on an old cemetery, and they removed the graves, the headstones, but they didn't move the bodies, so it's all these spirits of the people that the house, well, not just the house, the whole housing estate were built on. But the sequels kind of take it in a different direction. In this one, it's just kind of, there's these spirits there, and there's also the devil is down there as well, stopping these spirits from passing over. And they've got to deal with that as well to get the little girl back, because I forgot her name now. Oh God, I've forgotten. Carol Ann, that's it. Carol Ann gets taken by the spirits somehow. There's a portal. There's various portals in the house where things can go into the netherworld, and they take Carol Ann, and they've got to work out a way to get her back. And so they learn that the beast is in there, got many arms around Carol Ann and stopping the other spirits from passing over. In the sequel, in Poltergeist 2, by the way, I do like the sequels. Well, I like Poltergeist 2. I'm not a big fan of the third one, but I think Poltergeist 2 is pretty good. The beast is just a man that has kind of warped into the devil or a demon or something like that, who's like a priest or a minister, who's really scary. I think the second one is probably scarier than the first one, to be completely honest, mostly because of the priest that's in it. I forgot his name. But anyway, this first one, great film, some great effects in it, apart from the pulling the face off, that just looks silly. But a really good film, some cool moments. The ghosts coming down the stairs always gives me a chill. Really good stuff. So there we go. We're nominated for 3 Academy Awards, by the way. I don't know if it won any, but it was nominated. Right, and finally, another horror film. Some people suggest this is close to The Exorcist on the best horror films ever made. But yeah, it's up there. It's up there. I don't think it's quite as horrific as The Exorcist. But what we're talking about is The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing. Obviously a remake of the 1951 version of The Thing from Another World, based on the book, the novella Who Goes There by John W. Campbell Jr. Directed by John Carpenter, written by Bill Lancaster, the son of Burt Lancaster, and of course stars Kurt Russell, Wilford Brimley, T.K. Carter, David Clennon, Keith David, Richard Dysart, Charles Hallahan, Pete Maloney, Richard Mazer, Joel Polis, Donald Moffat, and Thomas Waits, and the dog, whose name I've forgotten. Get the Blu-ray or the DVD or whatever. There's one of the best documentaries making of ever on there. Watch that. Interviews from all the cast and everything. Jed, the wolf dog who plays the dog in the film. It's a great film, and I think it's the closest we'll get to an adaptation of Lovecraft's At the Mountains of Madness. I think this is the closest we'll get to it. Anyway, so the story is. By the way, music by Ennio Morricone, although I suspect John Carpenter probably did most of it. Ennio Morricone might have just, done some themes. That's what I think, because it does sound very John Carpenter. There's a lot of the music in it. Very, electronic. Anyway, not a hit at the time, by the way, when it came out. Kind of found its audience later. It was overshadowed by E.T., which is in the honourable mentions list. Anyway, set in Antarctica, the crew, I suppose you call them, of an American Antarctic base are settling in for winter. An all-male film, by the way. No women in this to get in the way. The crew are settling in for winter, but then suddenly a helicopter appears from a neighbouring Norwegian base. When it's a neighbouring, it's like, I think it's about an hour away by helicopter, so it's a fair old hike. This helicopter appears and it's chasing a dog, and they're shooting at this dog for some reason, and then they land and stuff goes doolally, the helicopter blows up and the fella's shoots one of the people and he gets shot and blah blah blah. So they think these people have gone crazy at the Norwegian base. But it turns out the dog is a monster, an alien monster that can change its shape and become anything it's absorbed before. So it starts taking over the personnel of the base. So you don't know who is human and who is an alien. It's all that stuff, and it ends on an ambiguous note. And it's a great film, tons of tension, amazing effects by Rob Bottin. Who ended up in hospital with exhaustion after doing this film. But as I said, get the Blu-ray or DVD and watch the documentary that's on it. One of the great making of documentaries. So there we go. That's The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing. They did a prequel to it in, I don't know, 2011, something like that. The 20-something, and. It was supposed to be a prequel starring Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and I didn't, it wasn't. I don't think it was rubbish, but it wasn't great, and it was essentially just a remake of The Thing, but kind of showing what happened, at the Norwegian base. But it did kind of set it up, and it was, it was nice towards the end. It was thinking, all right, they're sorting that out, and they're getting ready for that in The Thing. But it could have been better. It was a missed opportunity, and the CG effects. They shouldn't have done the CG effects, but they did. They did actually do practical effects, but studio exec says no, we're doing CG. Unbelievable. But anyway, that was the prequel / remake. So that was The Thing. Right. So next up. Honourable mentions. Right, first up, as I said, I don't know why I put this one in here, Swamp Thing. Directed by Wes Craven, starring Adrian Barbeau, Louis Jordan, and whoever played Swamp Thing, I can't remember. But obviously, an adaptation of the DC comics. I don't know why it's in it. I didn't particularly like it. But Adrian Barbeau gets a kit off in it, so fair enough. Right, next up, E.T., the Extraterrestrial. Came out the same time as The Thing. Kind of overshadowed it. Whereas The Thing's kind of nihilistic, E.T. were all hopeful and stuff like that and lovely. And I went to see it. I think I saw it a couple of times, I think, at the cinema. I do actually remember going with my mate. Our old cinema in town, back in the day, 1982, it had 2 screens. And on one screen, they were showing Poltergeist. And on the other screen, they were showing E.T. And I wanted to go see Poltergeist. But I think it was an 18 certificate. And me and my mate, I think we were only like 15 or something like that. Yeah, we were 15 in 1982. So I don't think he wanted to risk it. I was willing to sneak in. I was willing to say I'm 18 to go and see Poltergeist. But he didn't want to. I think it was an 18 certificate. Or was it? I don't know if we had 15s then. Did we have double A? I don't know. It must have been. Or it might have been an X certificate, not 18. I can't remember when they changed over. Back when I was younger, we had U, PG. No, it was U, A, double A, and X. That's what we had. And obviously, U were for everybody. A were for, like, it were alright, for films like Convoy and stuff like that got an A certificate. I think Jaws got an A certificate somehow. And double A's were for films like, I think Firefox were a double A for some reason. I think because people got shot and you could see blood and stuff, they got like double A certificates. And then X were for like horror films or sexy films, stuff like that. And I think it was an X with Poltergeist. God knows why. Probably because of the face thing. Anyway, my mate wanted to go see E.T., so we went to see E.T. instead, and I was sat crying because I'm a big girl's blouse, and my mate would just start laughing at it. Oh dear. So there we go, so that's E.T. Anyway, we all know E.T. Steven Spielberg directed it, etc. Speaking of Firefox, that's in the list as well. That's next, Firefox, directed and starring Clint Eastwood. We did it in Magnificent Mondays a few weeks ago. A cool film. I really like Firefox. About a pilot that's sent into Russia, the Soviet Union, back in the day to steal the most advanced fighter jet in the world, the Firefox of the title, the MiG-31. As it was at the time, they've gone past that now. And it's a cool film. It's a cool espionage thriller. Clint Eastwood's Russian speaking thing, and he's got to think in Russian. Don't exactly work, but apart from that, great effects from John Dykstra and Apogee. There we go. It's a cool film. Next up, speaking of effects, is Tron from Disney, the original Tron, utilising CGI graphics in parts, but I think most of the effects in Tron are actually hand animated, but we won't tell you that. Hand animated stuff and essentially photographic effects. It was essentially filmed. The bits where they're in the computer, by the way, it's about a man, Jeff Bridges, that gets pulled into a computer somehow by lasers, and he's got to basically fight his way back out. And when he's in the computer, I said there's some CG in it, but there's quite a lot of hand animation as well. You can tell the difference. But I think most of the time it was essentially filmed in black and white, and they were wearing costumes that were like reflective things, so they did effects with that as well. So that's how they did. Anyway, it's a cool film, and it got a sequel, which was okay. Right, next up, horror, Friday the 13th, Part 3 in 3D, coming at you at screens and stuff, and holding eyeballs out and props and what was it, doing all stuff like that, and oh look, it's 3D. But I love it, and it's where Jason gets his iconic ski mask. So there we go, Friday the 13th, Part 3, great film. But I like all of them. But Part 3's particularly good. Next up, The Beastmaster, another sword, what do you call it? Sword and sandals film. Not really, it's a fantasy film, innit? Whatever. Another fantasy film from 1982. I don't know if this came out before or after Conan, but I Like It More Than Conan, starring Mark Singer, the late Tanya Roberts, Rip Torn, who else? John Amos as well. It's another cool fantasy adventure film about a man called Da, who has an affinity with animals. Why they call it the Beastmaster. It's like Dr. Dolittle. He can talk to the animals, or some animals. So he's got a golden eagle called Sharak, a pair of thieving ferrets called Kodo and Podo, and a black panther called Roo, I don't know. RUH. Anyway, he's got to take on Rip Torn, who is like an evil priest in a city. It's kind of like Bronze Agey sort of thing. Maybe late Stone Age, I don't know, but they're sacrificing people. So he's got to sort that bad guy out. But he also comes across these weird creatures. I don't know what they are. I don't know if they've even got a name. But they end up helping him. They've got like bat wings, and they surround people, and they basically they dissolve you somehow. And they're kind of creepy. Anyway, it's a cool film. And it got several sequels. I don't think I've seen any of them. But anyway. Give it a whirl. That's Beastmaster. Right, next up in the honourable mentions, First Blood, the first Rambo film. This nearly made it into the top 5. It was either this or Rocky 3 for me. But I put Rocky 3 in instead. First Blood, the first of the Rambo films, the best of the Rambo films in my opinion. Where we first meet John Rambo, Sylvester Stallone as John Rambo. He's a Vietnam veteran who just passing through town, and he comes across not bad, but a sheriff who doesn't want him there because he thinks he's a vagrant. And really, it's all Rambo's doing. It's his stubbornness that gets him into the trouble that he gets in this film. Really, if he just turned his back and carried on, but no, he had to push it essentially. he was asking why are they pushing him, but he was the one that pushed back and kind of overdid it a bit. So a cool film is First Blood, with a great musical score from Jerry Goldsmith, but give that one a whirl. Right, next up, back to horror, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. A lot of people don't like Halloween 3 because it hasn't got Michael Myers in. After the second one, they were wanting to move away from Michael Myers and do like an annual Halloween film that were a different story each time, turn it into an anthology series. And so the first one was going to be Season of the Witch, starring Tom Atkins, Jamie Lee Curtis, somebody else. I'm thinking of The Fog for some reason. Tom Atkins, Dan O'Hurley, and somebody else. I've forgotten the name. Sorry. About an evil toy maker, essentially, who is also a witch, who wants to basically kill all the children on Halloween using these masks, Halloween masks that have been infused with evil from Stonehenge. They've stolen one of the sarsen stones or something from Stonehenge, and they're taking bits off it and putting it in microchips in the masks that will make kids' heads turn into snakes and bugs and stuff. Kind of creepy, but a lot of fun with some cool sequences in it. Right, next up, Q, the Wing Serpent, which we did on Friday Night at Porn with Fear recently. David Carradine, Richard Roundtree, and Michael Moriarty and Candy Clark star in Larry Frank. Is it Larry Franco? I think it's Larry Franco, isn't it? Film about essentially an Aztec god creature that terrorizes New York. It builds a nest up in the top of the Chrysler building where a lot of the film was shot. And it's up to David Carradine and the police to deal with it. It's not the best film ever made, but it's one of my favourites, and I really enjoy it. And it's got some cool stop motion effects for the budget that it had. It didn't have a huge budget. and it was shot really quickly. But that's cue the Wing Serpent. And finally, Creepshow from Stephen King and George Romero, an anthology movie based on the horror comics of the 50s and stuff like that. And it's a lot of fun. Some stars in it, it's Ted Danson and Leslie Nielsen and various others. In a few separate stories, followed by a sequel, which I think were just as good. I think Creepshow 2 were just as good as the first one, in my opinion. But the third one, forget about that. The less said about Creepshow 3, the better. But the first one is a lot of fun, and so give it a whirl. And Stephen King does some acting in it, and he's actually pretty good in it. Was it The Lonesome Death of whatever his character's called? I've forgotten. So there we go. That's me list. That's my list for 1982. Right. So let's go through them one more time, shall we? So, first up we had Rocky 3, that was followed by Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, then we had The Sword and the Sorcerer, then Poltergeist, and finally The Thing. And then, in the honourable mentions, we had Swamp Thing, for some reason, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Firefox, Tron, Friday the 13th Part 3, The Beastmaster, First Blood, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, Q the Winged Serpent, and Creepshow. So there we go, that was my list for 1982. What's 1983 got in store for us? Let's have a look. We've got a James Bond film, and we've got a sci-fi fantasy, we've got a huge space what they call it, space epic, a comedy, and a DC movie, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 3, 6, yes, 9 honourable mentions. Let me check, make sure there's no weird ones in, like, Swamp Thing. No, I think they all deserve to be in there. Right, so anyway, so that's for 1983, but we've just done 1982. A good year. Some say one of the best years, and I must admit, yeah, it was a pretty good year with 1982. I've probably missed some films out from this list, but these were just my favourites. So if there's any more from 1982 that you like, stick them in the comments, and I'll probably agree with you and say, oh yes, that were a good one as well. Right, so we'll leave it there. So thanks for watching, wherever you are, look after each other, and until next time, I'll see you.